Here we are. Listen, you can count backwards from 5 as well. I'm impressed, Rax.
Yeah, there you go. Look, I learned how to count to at least 10, I think. And
Can you
so
count?
the rest was
I
all
know where you are in the world now. Can you count to 10 in Malay or whatever it is there?
Bahasa. No, I can say maybe three, satu, dua, tiga. That all I can get to. I think there's umpak and lima somewhere there, but I don't know if it's in the right order. I don't know.
What about
Not yet.
Sim? Is she?
Yeah.
She's a numbers person, isn't she?
She can speak the language. She was born here, so she's
So now
very, very, very good at.
you got a situation then where you got a reliance on someone else, so you don't need to learn it.
Fortunately, ChatGPT's whisper mode really comes in handy when people are speaking and I just bring up the translator, be like, I don't understand. And then they say it. And I've got it trained really nicely. So I have been using it when needed. But recently, um, I think the more important language that I need to brush up on here is either my Mandarin or Cantonese. And so I feel like this is one of those countries that Indians and Chinese work really nicely together, actually. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Okay, so for those people listening to this, first of all, they don't know you, but we're doing this completely backwards, which is not unlike us. But where are you in the world today?
Right now, I'm in humid but beautiful Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Uh, yeah, in the offices here at Pounce Agency in Jalan Tunku Abdul Rahman. We have an office here, and yeah, I came here about now. It's been 6 months that I moved here effectively from Australia, and my God, it's been such an adjustment. I'll tell you that much. But it's beautiful. I think that Malaysia is a hotbed for what's about to happen commercially globally. And it's just super understated, which is great because for reasons we'll go into a bit later, we'll get into that. But yeah, yeah, that's where I'm at, Malaysia.
So for those that don't know us, as a lot of these episodes, I meet the person for the first time, so it's very much a blank canvas. And I actually, when people try and tell me a bit about themselves, their business, their services, their products, their story, whatever it is they want to talk about, I actually tell them to shut up because I'm quite rude. What? No, just save it for the episode. I want to hear firsthand. But I've spoiled that with you because we know each other very well, but what, for those that don't know our relationship to each other, we've known each other for years now. Okay, from Sydney, and that's where we're doing a good bit of work together with Pounce Agency, which is a fantastic digital marketing agency. I'm sure it's got a better punch than how I describe it. And for via business, we've been friends thereafter, and we've sort of supported each other's journeys since. So, how else would you describe Rakz outside of how I've just done it?
So I suppose the best way to describe Rakz outside of how you've described it is a really confused, technically creative person. Like I sit at the cross section of being creative, or I think I'm creative, and I sit at the cross section of being technical, or I think I'm technical, and so I suppose that's the best way to describe me in a nutshell. I live by this ethos that I exist to equip people with the tools needed to express themselves creatively. That's my why. That's my tombstone. That's why I live. And it doesn't matter whether that's in business, equipping people with information, giving people what they need to market their business, building technology, building infrastructure, working in AI. It's all about creatively coming up with ways to help people grow creatively. Again, coming back to that creative, because just at the sheer nature of things, most problems have a solution, which is creative. So and you need to think laterally to be able to solve it. And I suppose that's how I like to think of myself. And that's kind of my journey. My journey started about 25 years ago. I graduated as a developer, geospatial systems, working on satellite programming and decision support systems, some management information systems, really dry, boring shit that no one gives a fuck about in Australia at the time, right? Like, and I did that, and then I started going into that development route, developing a .NET, and I really realized that hated coding and I liked people more, right? And so I went into this line called BA, business analysis, where I had to deal with people, requirements to understand, what problems they were facing in the business and how technology would bridge that gap. So that's how I kind of work. And at the same time, I was massively into playing the drums. So, drums is a rhythmic instrument where you have to do beats and rhythms and like feel, but it's all maths. So it's engineering and logic applied in motion, right? Like that's kind of where you think about it. And four-way independence with the brain thinking your limbs having to split up four parts. So like there was this formation, sorry, of a creative brain that had to think logically, right? So I had to come up with polyrhythms on going into 4x4 time signatures. For anyone that knows music knows that sometimes it's impossible to do all of that sort of stuff. But there's no such thing when a client comes to impossible. It's how you achieve it. And I suppose that grounds my story in, I started this journey, and I believe I had a calling from God that said to me that I'm here to equip people to help them release create whatever they need to do through creativity. That's
I
my
I like
thing.
that because a lot of time when you ask people what they do, what defines them, and what have you, they talk about the title and quite rightly what defines them, but it isn't necessarily about that. It's about what that means to someone else, you know.
Yeah,
And I think that bridge of translation helps people understand it, understand you why, your purpose, what makes you you. So you're not just doing a vocation for the sake of vocation. What I did find
correct.
interesting. So your immediate label, which you also questioned as you said it, was that Rakz is a creative. Okay, when we give ourselves labels, in order to do that, we need to make a comparison. Okay, so you'd need to look at the people around you on your day to day when you realise don't like coding anymore of a people person, and realise comparatively speaking, I'm more creative than you, which is why I'm creative. Because if everyone, say you're still the same Max, but everyone else around you is really creative, then you struggle to call yourself that. You'd say you're something else, analytical or whatever. Um, would you say that's a justifiable statement?
Look, I think it's interesting. I think I don't know. I've always seen myself as a little bit of a bit of a dreamer, right? Like I've always sat there and I've kind of wandered away into thoughts in my head, and the words label, like it's a for me it's a trigger because I don't like labels. Number one, right? Um, and like when we think of defining something, we can only do a definition of something at a point in time, not an absolute, right?
Hmm.
We can only say at this stage, you could be feeling like this, or you could be thinking of yourself like this. Let's look at, for example, the quiz that is the Myers-Briggs persona test, right? It's a constant evolving thing based on your evolution as a person, as your experiences. And so analytics requires, I believe, everything in life requires a little bit of creativity. That's what I fundamentally believe, right? Whether it's writing an algorithm and thinking about numbers in a way that forms something, or it painting, or it's playing the drums, or it's coming up with like, out of the box solutions for special needs people to go into the workforce, right? Like anything that you do requires a little bit of thought. And, when you, and by the way, you're conditioned, right? When you're young to being like, square fits in square, round fits in round, but it doesn't, because in like finance, there's a thing called creative finance, and like there's a thing called trust structures for tax mitigation, and all of these kind of things that happen, but a brain has to formulate that and rationalize that, then realize it, and then enact it. Right. That's the kind of a process that my head goes through. Like I'll sometimes be sitting there for ages, just staring at a balloon. Then I get the idea. I'm like, oh, right. And so I may build 12 hours, but actual inspiration sparked in the last 18 minutes. And then it took 6 minutes to deliver that piece of work, because all of that time was, right, the time I needed my process to work. It happens. And coding, now they've started recognizing coding as creative, right? Like in the last 10 years, they've talked about flow state. This thing is happening for painters all the time, right? Flow was the thing, right? Um, so I think from coming back to labels, I feel like in the situation you're in, you can probably give yourself a label and you can surround yourself with like-minded people. But I still don't necessarily agree that labels are definitive. I think that they're time-bound for a season.
Yeah. So I believe that that makes sense to me that they have an expiry date. They evolve, they disappear. Who we are 10 years ago is quite different to who we are today. I will disagree with you to some point, though, but it's just personal preference. It's not a case of
Yeah.
disagreeing with your point.
And we
Um,
have to agree on everything.
I'm going to be creative with that. Um,
Yeah,
I
nice.
like labels. I like labels, and the reason I like labels is it. It's. I think it's such a shame. It's down to what you said. The word you said earlier, conditioning. Is most people do not really know themselves. They think they know themselves because of how their friends, their family, their peers at work communicate with them, how they respond to them. Okay, they're always laughing. I must be funny. Okay, I'm always get invited out. I must be sociable. Blah 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 blah. Okay, and it goes on. So we got this sort of like response, is conditioning response, and we think that's what we are, and it isn't. Okay, we go down a layer or two or 10. Okay, and the real person, the real identity of that individual, most people do not tap into. I firmly believe people can go their whole life without really knowing who they really are. Okay,
It's true.
so
I agree.
um, I actually like the idea of just sort of peeling back the onion a little bit and just questioning things. And actually, oh, mate, well, are you doing this job because that's you, or is it you doing the job because it's the best fitting vocation that you're surrounded by, which pays the return that you want for your time? You know, and then dig a little deeper and getting people questioning and finding themselves. So with that, then you get the opportunity to self-label with accuracy. And I like that. I like the idea of saying that someone saying, you know what, this is me, and I'll hang my hat on it. I've fluctuated, but this one hasn't gone anywhere. It's not likely to it in the foreseeable.
Yeah, that makes sense. It
Yeah.
makes sense from that perspective of like self-reflection and then hanging your hat there to being like, this is the definitive line in the ground. That's what I do. This is what I am kind of situation. That makes sense to me. Although, like, we're coming back to that, and it's that case of like, how do I put it? Chaos and order for people who like the boxes of thing, like versus the people who are like, nah, like, like, oh, look at that, and oh, okay. And I think that's the right segue, right? Because being an entrepreneur is kind of like you have to wear multiple hats, and you like chief operating officer pounds agency. Does that really? That's a label, right? It's a label. It's a title. But does that really define what I do on a day-to-day basis? Absolutely not. Chief firefighter, janitor, freaking tax collector, freaking paymaster, manager, like that kind of fits a little bit more, but CMORTRAFF doesn't kind of makes sense. So you know, I think that, yeah, I think it's an interesting. I think I have never thought about a nice, healthy discussion around label versus not. I think that's a deeper conversation we need to have, Tom.
It is. It is, and we're recording. It's rolling now, but maybe that's one over a scotch. Are you still not drinking?
I'm still not drinking. I've drunk a beer or two, but I'm still not having a good feeling when I'm drinking. Let's just say. So still on the health. I've lost a couple of kilos now, and while I'm here, it's a strange thing, but the health is the focus. And then actually next year is a full teetotal year. I made a decision even a month ago, and I told the family that all of next year I'm not drinking. So except for my birthday, that's the only 9th of April. I will drink next
I
year.
I was going to try my best to twist your arm if we do catch up in February
Yeah, yeah.
to raise a glass, or we might
Well,
we might be pushing next year out the window already.
yeah. Look, I mean, look, February's close to April, like about a month and a bit. So depends
It
on
could
when
be
you
a
come.
February
I
to
might.
April bender, and it classifies as one
Yeah,
session.
like it could be a bender, and then that I've stayed true. No, but like where possible, I'm trying not to drink. That's just the thing. And I think my palate's adjusting because when I do drink, it's not what I used to feel, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just like,
I'm the same. I'm drinking a lot less right now, and I can't drink that much, and it does have a
Yeah,
detrimental effect. But I've been a good drinker most of my life, so I probably deserve. My body needs a bit of a break anyway. But tell me,
break.
so
Yeah,
you had your business, in Sydney. You still have your business in Sydney. It's award
correct,
winning. It's got some brilliant blue chip clients. It's done very very well.
correct.
And why leave to Malaysia from Sydney with those circumstances?
Look, that's a really good question, and I think um, the first reason was, we wanted to. We knew two sides of this coin, right? Commercial and personal. Commercial. We knew the downward pressures of the market on budgets in marketing, right? We kind of knew what was going to happen, and we saw those trends 2 years ago. There's no way that those trends weren't going to hit Australia. Australia's population, its employment status at 4.5% unemployment, the highest it's ever been. The cost of living, the cost of business, the small to medium parity enterprise and small to medium in the taxes for going to that scale, right, that are going to help us with our cost, right? Number one, that was a commercial reason. We need to decrease cost, but increase value. So that was the first. Personally, at the time, we were like, our daughter was not born, but we were like, we eventually we would always question, will we go back to Malaysia? Will we come back? Because Sim's from Malaysia. As I said, she was born and bred here. And she left Malaysia for Australia when she was 15. And for the audience, Sim is the CEO of Pounce. She was the founder of Pounce. So it was always a case of, you go to India, right? Which would have been easy because my family business for 30, 40 years is in India. So to set up something in India would have been easy. Would you go to the Philippines like everyone else is doing, and set up something creative there? And we saw Malaysia, like when we started coming in, we saw that as a cross section of 3 or 4 different cultures. And we thought that creatively, that influence of all different cultures as a melding pot is the place we need to be. And the currency helped at the time. And then when we had Gianna, it was like Sim's grandma was going to be turning about 100, right? If we moved here. And so those kind of those kind of motions in our life kind of led us to a place of, let's set up, see how we go, right? And so we started the setup, and we built, we got the office ready and together. But you know what really pushed us over the edge? Malaysian HR. Managing overseas, it's not like India. It's a completely different vibe. The most holidays in the world, different kind of, people pressures, different kind of ways of handling people, and just building culture. And then we decided, look, it's not fair while we're building in Australia, and we've built this culture, and it's a very strong culture of, outspoken people that do what they need to drive the outcome, to come into a culture where a large part of the workers are subservient, and they are used to listening to the boss, and we didn't ever want that. So we felt like we needed to move to be able to build the culture of who we were as an organization, as a people at Pounce in Malaysia. And so all of those forces worked in our favor too. And that's why we made them.
Okay. All right. So what I like when I even just traveling overseas, let alone working and plying your trade, what I like about going overseas is you take a step outside of the box that you're used to, and you can see what's inside the box a lot clearer. Okay. Because we live our days on automation, even in the most disruptive of entrepreneurial days where curveballs are coming, things are getting excited, people are coming out with brilliant ideas. We're still in automation because of a normality of surroundings. But going overseas, that changes the perspective of things, the perception. Is that something you've experienced yourself?
100%. 100%. I think, where do I even start with this? Okay. Australia. We say the C word. We are larrikins. We're outspoken. We are loud. We're brass. We're fun loving. We love to drink. All of this sort of stuff that makes Australia Australia. It makes Australia Australia. You know what I mean? Like that. There is a vibe to Australia. That's all the good things, by the way. Um, what happens when you move to a country which is predominantly Muslim, right? In terms of the country is a Muslim country. Um, it's a cultural melting pot. Languages are different, and it's not even regional language different. It's multiple languages. And multiple cultures, it's your sensitivity level has to kind of work overdrive. Now, if you are obnoxious, you don't give a damn, you don't give a damn, and you don't get far in either life or business, right? But you kind of need to be, if you're moving here, you kind of have to adapt, right? In cultural norms and sensitivities. And, I found myself, while I've made a really good group of friends here, like I'm starting to form some really good foundational friendships, you know, they're like me. We talk shit. We talk loud, and it's a lot of fun. I'm meeting groups of people in all different kind of things. There are groups of people where, for example, I went to like a pitch day for the Securities Commission, which is like the ASIC. Shaking a female's hand, they wouldn't want to do it, right? Because they're regional from the farms and they're Muslim and they don't want to really even shake your hand. And that's polarizing, right? For someone coming over, like you're like, why aren't you shaking my hand? But that's just the way it is. That's just, that's the norm here. So I think from a personal perspective, adjustment is the key word. And you can't ever be like an American, if you know what I mean. Even Americans have to adjust because they're just not going to get the vibe that they need to get here to do business, specifically doing business, right? And it's all about who you know here. It's not really how smart you are. Like, it's being smart is good, but who you know really helps. Now, there is sitting outside Australia. I don't know if I can come back from a professional perspective, right? Because some of the things that I see in Malaysia, I've opened my eyes up to the world. Because Australia's tall poppy syndrome thing that's often just spoken about, but you see it in practice when you leave, right? Because, for example, the Australian High Commission's help to businesses that are expats from Australia is significantly more than the government would help Australia. Sorry, that's just the fact. That's my experience of how I faced it. The collaboration within the startup community and the scale up community is significantly higher here, that they actually want to collaborate and work rather than just say and then don't, right? The racial groupings actually help because they're at least the scope of your business alliances. You know how you're going to be able to work. There's a level of like trust that you can build when you build a good foundational network, right? Whereas in Australia, it's a little bit different. You're either one of the small business community that's always sighing and complaining about how business is going and blah blah blah, or like you're in Malaysia, if one business doesn't work, pick up another fucking six, right? Because that's what they do. There is a work ethic also that certain cultures have here. Well, I'm not going to name those cultures, but certain cultures that is like unbelievable, right? And then to top it all off, you're in this thing called the Yangtze Circle, which is the 4,000 kilometers around the city of Yangtze in China, which makes up 4.5 billion people, which means half of the world's population, right? Versus the 29 million people, of which a percentile is business, of which you're trying to garner business, right? And tall poppy reigns supreme, right? So when I think about those things from an outside, I've seen them in motion. Comparative things. The Securities Commission took a foreigner, me, to judge a panel on pitching for startup funds with their what's it called, with their internal group of investors. I have been in the country 3 months. This happened. It took me 8 years to meet of someone of note in government in Australia. 3 months, 8 years. Right? No knowledge difference, no person difference, no experiential difference, effectively. I was younger, I'm older, right? So when I look at it from that perspective, Australia needs to open up its mind a little more because it's heading down the path of America quite fast, right? In terms of commercialization. Australia as a place to live, right? Beautiful country. Come back, retire, great. Honey is amazing. Milk is amazing. Food's great. Ingredients are tops. But like when you leave for the reason of business alone, opportunities open up, and then it just doesn't, like, the Australian government has to do better,
Mhm.
right, in order to get people.
I think
That's what I think, anyway.
I think you and I have been saying this for years. That there's a bit of noise around startup scale ups and small business, small medium enterprise in Australia. But when it actually comes to genuinely backing these businesses and genuinely giving them an abundance of tangible tools to make it happen, it's quite sparse. It is sparse,
Yeah,
and some of the ATO initiatives, and they've even in New South Wales, they've just closed down the small business advisory support. That's just been closed down. Yeah,
that's
I think
ridiculous,
that's
right? Think about this.
it's criminal.
Think about
It's
this.
criminal, isn't it?
It's ridiculous. Think about this for a second, right? Like, let's just talk about this whole notion of um, payroll tax, right? You get to $1 million in salaries paid, right? Which is you're paying people $1 million in wages a year, $84,000 a month. So the government goes, okay, you're paying people's taxes, which is paying us. Now, because you've gotten to 1 million, you must be good enough to pay more tax on that. Thank you very much. Right? Whereas we'll sell off our mines and our energy for next to nothing and no tax to the big corporates, right? Here's the thing. When I was in Australia, I was very apolitical. I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it because I was conditioned to the square goes in the square, the round thing goes in the round. We have a great medical system, amazing medical system. Not even like, and people were saying the medical system is shit in Australia. Like, trust me, the medical system is great. But business, mate, do better, Australia.
Well, but you raised an interesting point there. So we've got this. Yeah, it's not a pleasant tipping point of success as a business once you've hit that milestone of the payroll tax. So it's tax on tax on tax on tax. It just keeps going. But the biggest contributor to the Australian economy is the SME market. Okay, so surely let's look at it for the government viewpoint and talk about revenues in to pay for things like healthcare and so forth. Okay, if they know that's where most of their cash is coming from, why would they not support it in the first place? Why would they pull back the supports, the guidance, the tools? It seems counterintuitive.
It's very counterintuitive, and the real reason behind it is the big boys tax, right? Because these private lenders fund infrastructure. It's not the small to medium. Like at the state level, at the state parliament, state government level, it's the taxpayers that pay $7 million worth of infrastructure lost to a system integrator, lost physical hardware that then they need, or two pilots of Google versus things, and making decision at the CIO of the state level, which is so anti taxpayer favorable. And it's that fiduciary responsibility that's lacking at that level, which then means we go into a deficit budget, right? So then we need the big corporates to bail us out, right? And loan us more. And so when we start thinking of financial markets, right, we start thinking about, look at India. Oh, we're the third world country. Look at China. Oh, those guys, right? Now you ain't complaining because there is a massive movement for all international South Indians to come back to India and bring their knowledge. The Prime Minister is really focusing, Narendra Modi is focusing on bringing it all back because make a better India. All I can say is Yuxi Circle. I mean, for us strategically, like we've made some decisions internally about heading into Riyadh. Dubai is a bit saturated. We did a bit of research around it, and we were originally going to go to Dubai, but Riyadh is our next protocol in terms of where we set up. The markets of technology, innovation, creativity are just bloody amazing out there, you know. And what used to be the dream, let's go to Madison Square or let's go to, Madison Park, like advertising mecca, America, just doesn't exist. There's no desire left.
It's a
So
good series though to
yeah,
watch on Netflix.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Mad Men, is it Mad Men? Mad Men.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, look, I think, I've been here 6 months, right? I can say safely that to me, I'm still, I'm still the unknown person, the foreigner, right? But I'm making great inroads. We're making great friends. We're doing great deals. Offline, I'll tell you about a deal that I just did yesterday, or we just did yesterday. That just would not have happened how quickly and the way it happened. It would never happen in Australia like that.
There we are. So, anybody listening to this, doing business in Australia, hopefully this broadens the mind somewhat. And there'll be plenty of people that's listening to this. There'll be people in Malaysia that be excited to see you test how creative you are at. And I know we work together. We got some things in the pipeline. No doubt when any of these sort of come to see the light of day, we'll get you back on for another episode and we can continue where we left off. How's that sound?
No worries. Sounds amazing.
All right. All right. Well, I appreciate that. When we do go live with this, please do put your website details in the comments so people can reach out to you. And yeah, thanks again for the chat, Rakz.
No worries. Thanks a lot. Have a lovely day. And thank you so much for the opportunity.